everyone, and if you're watching this, I'm sorry to say that you found yourself to another episode of Faith of Our Flyers. I'm Peter Grodi, your friendly neighborhood seminarian. Okay, first things first, a little bit about the praise and worship holy hour that we had. I'm sure that most of you students at least have heard about it. After all, I did make it pretty darn clear, at least to the high school students, that I wanted them to come. All in all, it seemed like a great success. I had a wonderful time. It was a very moving experience even for me. And I've gotten lots of feedback from adults and youth, teenagers, everyone, that it seemed to be a really moving event filled with the grace of God. That was so clear in it, that the Holy Spirit was moving in us and just giving us this wonderful opportunity to meet Him, to meet Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit in a very special way. I hope it did make a difference for all of you who were able to be there. If you were not able to be there, you did to me. For those of you who couldn't make it for one reason or another, I know there's all different kinds of things you could say. There will be more opportunities. We have decided to have at least a few more. The response was just so good, asking for more of them, that it'd be hard for me to say no. So for those of you who did come, don't stay quiet about it. Share your experience with other people. And once we get the next one planned, I hope that you'll invite at least one other person. Okay, so for this week's topic, we're going to stay a little light. We're not going to go into any deep theology. I'm just going to tell you a few interesting facts about a place that we all probably should know a little bit more about, the Vatican. The seat of St. Peter's Apostolic Authority, the central governing place of the Magisterium, and the ultimate bachelor pad. Get it? It's like a celibacy joke, because of all the priests and they can't... Well, okay, you get the point, right? I'm sure we all know something about the Vatican, whether it's, watching the Pope on television make a few laps in his Pope-mobile, or whether it's something more substantial than that. But I'm pretty sure that most of you don't know these interesting facts. If you do know them, then, kudos to you. Sorry you had to waste 10 minutes of your life watching this video. Okay, number one, the Vatican City. It's a demarcated place right in the middle of Rome, not very big. It's actually its own country. Did you know this? It's actually its own country. It's the smallest country in the world, both in geographical size and in number of people in the country itself. The Pope rules over this country. He's actually head of the judicial, legislative, and executive branches of the government. The country is actually considered a sacerdotal, I don't really know how to say that word, sacerdotal monarchy. That's the word. The entire country is about 0.17 square miles. And last I checked, there was like around 1,000 residents there. The uniqueness of this place is kind of incredible on a number of levels, but one of them is the economy. The economy is almost completely supported by stamp sales, tourist attractions like museums and things like that, tourist memorabilia, sales of tourist memorabilia, and publications. And so it basically is like an entirely tourist-based economy. Fact number two, the Vatican actually has its own national soccer team. Or as they say over there, football. Now, the team doesn't, compete in big events like FIFA. It's not a part of the FIFA group. But, make no mistake, it is a national soccer team. And it does play, sometimes, it does play against international soccer teams like Monaco it plays against. It plays against various teams in other parts of Italy and in Germany. Probably the most interesting about the soccer team is that the team is entirely composed of other employees of the Vatican, most of which are like part of the security department, so basically Swiss guards. Speaking of which, let's talk about these fine-clothed fellows for a second. I'm sure that many of you know about the Swiss Guard or have heard of them before. They're the traditional security force for the Pope and basically the standing army of the Vatican city-state. However, you probably didn't know these facts. Firstly, despite their rather medieval and kind of outdated appearance, the Swiss Guards are actually pretty dangerous. It's not just that they're trained with those big spear thingies, which they are, and other medieval equipment, which is kind of interesting. They're also equipped with some of the most high-tech and efficient modern weaponry out there. You probably just don't notice it because, on the outside they're carrying these big spear or sword thingies, and they don't really look that dangerous. But underneath they've got, like, automatic machine guns. History has actually proven the capability of this group, which actually started out as like a mercenary group that the Pope hired to defend him. It was the Swiss Guards were this mercenary group. They're actually the first, or not necessarily the first, but they're kind of the precursor to modern special forces units. It's pretty interesting. But at one point in history, they were forced to defend the Vatican against an invading force from like the High Emperor at the time. And there was only like 187 of them, and they were defending themselves against basically an entire army. I mean, this was basically the real-life version of like the 300 Spartans. These guys held the Vatican long enough for the Pope to escape through a secret passage underground to escape from the place, and like 90% of their numbers died in the process. I mean, these guys certainly aren't there just for the money. They're there to defend the Pope, and they're highly dedicated to their job. And in case any of you young guys, had it in your mind that this would be kind of a cool position to apply for, sorry, you actually have to be Swiss. That's not just a name. Yeah. Okay, fact number 4. During World War II, the Nazis occupied Rome, something that we call pretty much realize, right? Nazi occupied Italy. But what you may not have known is that the Nazis did not occupy the Vatican. For various reasons, Hitler decided not to occupy the Vatican. However, probably because he was pretty superstitious. However, he did keep the Pope and his entourage contained in the city. At one point during World War II, the commander who was in charge of Rome at the time, he wanted to make it very clear to the citizens and to the Pope and to the members of the clergy there at the Vatican that he was in charge of Rome, and they had their place, and that those two shouldn't mix. So he drew this line around the Vatican, around St. Peter's Square, and basically the Vatican city-state, on the cobblestones with white paint. You can see in pictures, I don't have one for you, I'm sorry. I looked for them, and I had a hard time, I couldn't find any on short notice, but I've seen them myself. You can see pictures of, on one side of this white line, the Nazi soldier is patrolling, and on the other side, there's a Swiss guard in his medieval getup. It's kind of a funny picture if you think about it, if you can imagine it, because on one side you have this contemporary European military man, and the other side you've got this guy in striped medieval clothing carrying a pike. Our last fact is sort of odd. You may not believe it, but the Vatican City has the highest crime rate of any country in the world. Think about that for a second. I mean, as shocking as it may be, it is a little misleading, okay? The Vatican City has an average crime rate of about 1.3 crimes per citizen in the country. Okay, so that's obviously very, very high. I mean, imagine, that in America. However, we got to remember that, first of all, there's only like 1,000 people that actually live there, and a lot of them are actually out of the state at the time. And it's a high-traffic tourist spot. And so what you have is tons and tons of people coming through there all the time, which is obviously a magnet for things like pickpockets and stuff. And so those actually end up being most of the crimes. But still, I mean, it's kind of an odd distinction to hold, right? Highest crime rate in all of the world, and it's the center of the Catholic Church. Well, there you go, a few more facts that you know about the Vatican. I hope that this show moved you a little bit closer to achieving that childhood dream of one day winning Jeopardy! Say hello to Alex Trebek for me, okay? Goodbye, and we'll see you at Mass.